Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Global Legal Tech Talks, delivered in partnership with Workday. I'm Frances Anderson, I'm the CEO of NetLaw Media, and it's a pleasure to welcome you all to today's session. We're going to be looking at Agile by Design, how AI and modern systems are redefining productivity and talent in law firms. Law firms and legal teams are under pressure to deliver more, faster, smarter, and with greater precision. In this session, we're going to be exploring how AI and modern cloud systems are reshaping legal operations to drive efficiency, resilience, and agility. We'll look at how AI can free up time, streamline workflows, and ensure the right skills are deployed at the right moment. But while recognizing the real impact comes from how well these technologies are embedded through smart design, effective change, and integrated systems approach. I'm delighted to introduce our chair for today, who is Jay Connolly. Jay is the Global Chief People Officer at Baker McKenzie. Based in London, he brings extensive international leadership experience, having worked across the UK, Europe, and US. A trusted advisor to senior leadership, Jay combines deep commercial insight with proven ability to mobilize people and organizations to deliver results. This session is live and we encourage your participation. So please do share your questions via the Q&A chat at the function you'll see at the bottom of your screen, or in the chat function. We will pick that up and then we will bring it into conversation. So if you'll please join me in welcoming Jay Connolly. Jay, it's over to you.
Francis, well, look, thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction and great to be with you all today for this conversation. Listening to that bio, I think it's going to need to change for CPOs, CHROs, to not just mobilizing people to deliver results, but to mobilize people, AI, technology as we look forward. And as we jump into today's conversation, I'm sure for many of you, and certainly for the three of us as we kick off this conversation as a panel, it's a conversation and discussion that's happening daily and if not hourly in many firms or many organizations. I was looking yesterday and there was an article or a headline in the FT which highlighted that the big four are posting more roles for AI specialist jobs than they are for auditors. Things are changing. We know that. But what does that actually look like within firms? And as we think about our sector, thinking about where we're heading, I think we definitely will see that rise in different roles, some of that rebalancing that people are talking about, a change in the model, which I think is really relevant as we jump into our conversation here, and that shift in skills as well. So lots for us to cover as we go through the next 55 minutes or so, and really looking forward to the discussion. But first of all, maybe Kelly and then Helen, thank you very much for being on and part of this conversation. But maybe Kelly first, you could just take a moment to introduce yourself before we get going.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be a part of the conversation. This is an area I'm particularly passionate about. So I work at Workday, and part of my role is to look after our existing customers in the professional and business services space. So as part of that, over the last 2 or 3 years, I've been partnering with our law firms that use us predominantly in the HR area to look at what best practices look like in terms of optimizing and transforming that back office function of HR, which ultimately leads to partners and lawyers being able to get back to what it is that they do best, which is earn fees for the firm.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kelly. And thank you again for being with us. Helen.
Hello, thank you. So I'm Helen Goldberg. I'm co-founder and COO of Legal Edge. We provide fractional general counsel services mainly to fast growth tech companies. I'm an ex-M&A lawyer, ex-Bakers actually, funnily enough, and moved in-house a long time ago. So I'm kind of talking from the in-house counsel perspective.
Fantastic. Thanks, Helen. Thank you for being with us and really looking forward to that perspective as well as we go into the discussion. So maybe as we jump in and kind of picking up on some of the themes and that outline that Francis kicked us off with, and I suppose taking a moment to kind of pause and think about this word agility and what does that actually look like today, and what does that mean as we think about agility in this context? So Kelly, I don't know whether you wanted to share a few thoughts around that.
Yeah, certainly. So I think, not to start with the definition of agility is, but I'm going to do it anyway. It's being ready for whatever comes your way and being able to adapt so that you can follow the flow of that. And I think, in the last couple of years, the predominant thing that firms need to be agile towards is AI. And at the moment, the pace of it changing in its developments, it's really incredibly hard to keep up with. Even those of us in the tech industry, it's hard for us to keep up with it. And I think the firms that are or will be the most agile are the ones that have the really strong foundations in place when it comes to their technology stack. So I think when I'm talking about that, if I think of, the lens of HR, it's that system of record, it's the business processes, it's the security framework, it's the adoption and the usability within the firm. Once all those things are solid and in place, you're then ready to take benefit from AI in whatever context it is that you're looking to deploy it. So if I give you a real life example of that, something that's coming up more and more at the moment, and I think maybe top of a law firm's list in terms of AI technology, if you were to look at generative AI for review of contracts, for example. If you're a firm where all of your contracts are sat across several different solutions in different areas, it's really hard to be able to use a new AI tool across that, because the AI can only perform as well as the strength of the data that's being able to pull upon. So if you were to do that, you'd have to spend months collating that data, making sure everything's in one place. And by the time you've done that, you've kind of missed the peak and the wave of that AI functionality. So if you were to flip that and think about a firm where that foundation is in place, it's as simple as plugging in an AI tool into that centralized system and getting going with it. So that to me is what agility is in this context. And those are some of the things that can help a law firm be as agile as it can possibly be.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kelly. And look, I think that theme around foundations and processes are core to, we spend time thinking about, well, what is that technology? What is the AI we need to plug in? But actually spending time really ensuring that, how we're operating, and particularly some of those key processes, we are able to then better leverage the technology that we want to plug in. And certainly as I think about conversations that we've had internally, spend a lot of time focused on that kind of process element, and where's the opportunity to align and then streamline and then actually use the technology to support. So really resonates in terms of where you've gone in terms of thinking about agility. Helen, from your perspective, what would you add?
Well, and look, I think like lots of law firms and lots of businesses as a whole, we are looking internally at what we use AI for to be better internally for our business, and externally how we're doing the work that we need to do to get better and quicker. And so those sorts of things are going in parallel. But I think what's really interesting for me is we work typically with smaller in-house legal teams. Or where we are the only in-house counsel. And there's an expectation there just to adopt AI, just to get quicker, sometimes without sort of thinking really sensibly about what we should be using it for and what we shouldn't. And also what I think is quite interesting is people saying, I can just do without lawyers now. That's a whole nother discussion.
And we may get there one day, but we're certainly not there yet, it seems. And in terms of, you said really not thinking about sensibly how to use the technology. What does that look like as the kind of challenge and pushback that you've been using to help in that conversation and kind of think it through in a manner that's beneficial?
And look, I think it's really interesting, because I think as in-house counsel, what we always want to do is help the business be better at what they're doing. So what we really like to do is, and I think this is where all in-house legal teams and external legal teams need to be now, which is helping people to adopt technology in the right way. So that's what we really like doing, is making sure that contract management systems, et cetera, are working really well. And there were two examples that I have recently from having talked to I was talking to Francis about this earlier, hearing at one of the conferences that Francis put on recently, the GC of the Financial Times talk about the fact that they're now using AI to deal with any contract that's worth under £20,000 without any human contact. And then similarly, having been at the Juro conference last week or the week before, hearing Andy Cook from PERC talk about the fact that 90% of their contracts apparently are done without any human contact at all. So it's really interesting to see how this is developing and how in-house teams are getting quicker and better. And there's this, I guess, this theory of we need to rise above and really do good quality work and not the sort of lower quality work. But when does that, when are we getting close to that line?
Yeah.
And Kelly, maybe similarly, what sort of practical examples are you seeing where firms are being able to kind of apply tools, AI, technology to really make change and drive some of that productivity? So are there any examples you could share?
Yeah, I certainly can. And I think just to sort of touch upon what Helen said there, a phrase that we use quite often with our customers is not to use AI for AI's sake. It needs to be tangible, measurable, and proving that it can make someone's job easier. That is a good use of AI. If it's not making someone's job easier, then it shouldn't be there. I think quite often people use or would interchange the word easier with quicker. That doesn't necessarily mean that the outcome is better, though. So again, it's looking at that. But in terms of the practical examples that we see with our customers, I can't take credit for this. It's one of my customers that sort of walked me through and explained it in this way, which just really resonated with me. When we talk about AI in the legal sector and within a law firm, there's AI that's transforming the practice of law, and there's AI that's transforming the business of law. And obviously that first one, you're looking at the likes of a Legora, a Harvey. It's that client-facing technology that allows a lawyer to complete their work faster or in a better way, not having to do more manual processes. From our side at Workday, we're more of that back office functionality, particularly through the HR lens. And a couple of examples that I'm seeing the most productivity gains from, and also the biggest impact within the law firms are agentic use cases around recruiting. So again, faster time to hire. Again, that's a challenge that any HR team are looking to solve. But I think the biggest one that then in turn affects the fee earners as well is anything that can be done around self-service when it comes to HR. So I think, lawyers and partners have come to expect this incredible user interface, and whether that's when they're in Legora or Harvey, or whether that's when they're on the train home and they're asking what to make for dinner on ChatGPT or Gemini, that's the user interface we've all expected to have. And therefore, when we're going to typically HR and asking, why is my pay slip different this month? Or how do I find our shared parental leave policy? They expect that same experience there. And when HR isn't able to give that to them, it creates a huge realm of issues. One, it paints HR as a dated function within the business, which is not what they are. Two, it's taking time away from that fee earner. It's making it longer for them to find the answer to their question, taking time away from their client. So we shouldn't be in a world where that exists. We should be helping them get to a place of I can find the answer on my own as quickly as I can, so I can get back to doing what I do best, which is earning fees.
Yeah. What does I don't know, good, I was going to say best in class, but I mean, what does good in that space look like today? So yes, there'll be some firms that are further out, but as we sit here and reflect on some of those practical steps we should be taking and thinking, I like how you framed it in terms of there's the practice of law and the business of law, and of course we've got to be thinking about both sides of that, but on kind of the business of law and how we're structuring things internally. And your examples in the HR space resonate, and I think there's a lot of parallels as we look across functions or functional areas within firms. But picking up on that example or anything else, what does good look like today? Where should we all make sure that we're striving for in terms of delivering here?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think good will look different to each and every law firm because there are some firms, particularly some of the smaller boutique firms that want to keep that human relationship in there. They want to have a good relationship, an interpersonal relationship between lawyers and HRs, and they may feel that that's their differentiation point as an employer. But in terms of AI, and I would say if I were to answer your question in that good equals the most advanced technology that's out there, it's very much around the agentic piece. So that is very much where an employee can interact with an agent and ask questions, find an answer, and in some cases, the agent could actually complete the transaction for them. So as an example, it's taking it from where we were maybe even 3 or 4 months ago of asking a question simply like, how many holiday days do I have left? Taking it to the next level, which is, can you book next Friday off for me? And I think that's what good looks like in terms of the most advanced technology that's there. And I think for more firms than it won't be, that will be good for them.
Yeah. And that very much resonates. And I think getting to a point where, as we think about within organizations or within firms, we're able to do that through a single point of entry. And whatever that platform is that firms are using, but instead of having to go to multiple systems, even using the AI in those systems, but actually doing it in a one-stop location. Helen, just coming back to thinking on the other side, then the practice of law a little bit. I presume the conversations that you're having and with clients, there's still a spectrum of kind of where organizations are on
There
this
really
journey.
is. Yeah.
But what does some of that look like, just to give a little bit of flavour around
Yeah,
that?
it is really interesting. And I think what good looks like from an in-house counsel's point of view is using AI sensibly for the delivery of in-house legal to their client, the business. So what we're seeing is AI helping with the legal front door, answering the questions that we get as in-house counsel over and over again. There's a kind of those annoying, silly questions that you just want answered easily. There's now that legal front door, and also helping to triage and prioritize the important work that the in-house counsel should be doing. That's what really good looks like. I would say on the not so good side, what we're getting are queries from people who don't have any in-house legal saying, oh, what tools are you using? We'll just adopt those. And that slightly worries me, because then what you're doing is having people, and maybe I'm being too controlling about this, having people reviewing contracts, building contracts who, so for example, we had this query the other day from a COO saying, what are you using? We've got a young business affairs associate or a paralegal who's we're going to buy this technology, this AI tool that you're using, and we're just going to have them run it. And I sort of said, well, you sort of need to know what you're doing to at least set this up and put the guardrails in place and the escalation process in place to run all of those 9,000 contracts that they were running. So that's kind of, I think, the comparisons that we're getting at the moment. And then I'm sure, as you and lots of people on this call are getting, we're just getting a lot of what I think is known as work slop. People sending us questions going, hey, AI's created this or told me this is the right answer. Can you just confirm it? And I'm getting my own legal AI tool to answer the query as to why it doesn't work, which is quite interesting.
Yes. Yeah. Bizarre. We see it in a number of different places, on the practice side, and I think on the business side. And I certainly think, from a recruiting perspective, where we might have candidates using AI, and now we've got tools to check whether candidates have used AI. This bizarre road that we're kind of heading down in some.
And
respects.
I think it is what you said earlier about that sort of, it enhances everybody's knowledge to the extent that you've got that knowledge. I'm not sure that's quite how you said it, but there is a lot of, I don't really know what I'm talking about, but AI seems to, and then somebody actually has to go, actually, I'm sorry, it really doesn't.
Yeah,
exactly. And I think, when we talk about AI, in the same way that AI will replace some of the things that a person is doing. It won't replace that person's role and responsibility. It won't replace that person's intelligence and the knowledge that they have. And I think where we see best practices of AI, it's when you're using it as an extension of yourself. You're doing the best that you can, and you're getting it to carry you over the line, particularly in the practice of law. That, in my opinion, is where it's at its strongest, and where you are continuing to flex that muscle of lawyers, building up their experience and their knowledge, so that they're not just typing in and getting the answer. That there are so many examples at the moment where you see on things where, I use AI to write an email for me and I've forgotten how to do it now. There's simple things like that, and that's a very mundane example. But in my mind, AI should be fine-tuning that email or suggesting a change of phrase to make the tone better. It shouldn't be writing it from scratch. That should still come from you as an individual.
Yeah, great points. And it reminds me, when we've been chatting about the real human element in all of this that we cannot and should not forget. And we've talked about kind of the mindset element here, and kind of the behavioral component of all of this. And we know we've got those who are keen to adopt and are kind of out there at more of the leading edge, and we've got those who are more resistant to using some of the tools that firms will have in place. But thinking about that spectrum of individuals and how we're moving people along and helping with that, some of that mindset shift, and some of those expectations in terms of how we expect people to be operating, because it is different. It is about change, and again, the example about how I'm crafting an email, or how I go about work that I might have been doing for many years, but now how do I do some of that differently? And I think that's the same on the practice of law as well as it is on kind of thinking about the business of law. But we've got some work to do to drive that mindset shift, and support on some of those behavioral changes, I think, as well. Which maybe brings us to reflecting a little bit on how firms or how organizations are really kind of navigating some of this change. I think, Kelly, you said at the outset, even in an organization like yours, it can sometimes be hard to keep up with some of the change that is taking place. So how do we in the sector, in firms, thinking about in-house, how do we navigate that change? And I think importantly, and you've talked about this, both of you have talked about it previously, but to do so in a confident way. I was at a dinner last night, and it's striking any time that this topic comes up. There are those who see the glass half full and those who see it half empty. And the table again was split last night. So maybe some of that mindset and behavioral impacts coming in. But how do we navigate the change, but to do so in a kind of confident way? Kelly, did you want to kick us off on that?
Yeah, it's one of those questions where the answer is sort of how long is a piece of string, in the sense that every individual, dependent on their role or organization they work for, will need to be met in a different place. And I think kind of the mantra that I try to hold with the customers that I work with is meeting them where they are, because every day it's going to be different. And what I mean by that is, as you said, you have people that are they may have a huge appetite and excitement for AI, but actually the risk of their reputation is so strong that that's preventing them from taking the step that they want to take. On the flip side, you may have an individual where they're absolutely paralyzed by anxiety as to whether the career that they've built over the last 10, 15 years and grafted for is going to exist in 3 years' time. And that's really, really scary. So I think it's massively about meeting someone where they are and tailoring the message to them specifically. And I think from the law firm perspective, HR has a huge role to play in this. This is very much a human problem more than a technology problem. You could go and invest in and deploy the most fantastic AI technology out there. If no one uses it because they don't feel confident in it, then it's neither here nor there as to the decision that you made for it. So I think HR teams within law firms have a role and a responsibility to address the elephant in the room, which is we as law firms know that we are quite high on the list in terms of industries that are going to have the largest amount of change when it comes to our roles. And I think that the best way to do that is to address it from the perspective of this is what's in it for you. This is how this future-proofs your career. So come on the journey with me. And that may sound a bit cliche, but I think if you spin it in that angle, humans are, a selfish animal. If we can see what's in it for us, it's much easier for us to get on board and take that under our remit and lean into it and embrace it. So I think that's one element of it. The other element, if you've got someone who's really excited about it, but they're really concerned about the risk and what that means. And again, in a law firm, it's huge, whether it's at the individual level or at the firm level. If we deploy technology and that technology touches our clients, and that technology in 1, 2, 3 years' time is found to be biased, for example, what does that mean for us as a firm? Could that make us, not workable with anymore? And I think in those cases, it's around education from the technology side. So any AI technology today that has been built in the right way will be built with the controls whereby you as a user and as a customer will be able to set your own guardrails and parameters in place. That means that you manage the risk and you only take on what you're comfortable to take on. So I think it's balancing those two things. And when firms lead with those mindsets, that's when they're ready to make the change in the best way that they can.
Really interesting.
I'm nodding vigorously, Kelly, you can tell. And I think, Jay, just adding to that, I think we certainly see this within our business and within the businesses that we work with. We've got people on both sides of that dinner party place where people are worrying about their jobs. Yeah. And then also people who are going, great, this is something we really need to embrace. But I do think we absolutely need to, whether we go apocalyptic or not, I think we have to embrace it and work out how to do our jobs a little bit differently. I mean, we as in-house counsel now, we will only really have work with in-house counsel who will work with AI. We have to now because, that is the way of the world and that's the way we're doing our work using AI.
Yeah. And, I was curious if you both had thoughts on how to go about some of that in organizations. And I was reflecting on, some of the things that we've talked about and we've been doing, which very much resonates with what you both highlighted. One, I do think it's important to be having these conversations within firms. And Kelly, you kicked off, saying, meet people where they are. This concern or this spectrum exists. And I think having the conversation and recognizing that we don't have all of the answers. But I think ignoring it or not touching it or leaving that vacuum is clearly a challenge. So I think there have been consciously more conversations and discussions in our practice groups, in our functional teams, at all levels of the firm. Secondly, it's interesting, and I think there's a spectrum on this, that there are those that are using AI, like they picked up an iPhone, and there was no instruction manual, and they've learned, and that's fine. There are those who perhaps picked up an iPhone and wanted their instruction manual. So as we think about some of the development piece, how we actually support and have some programming around that. For some, that will be I don't need it. For others, that's the kind of kickstart. That's the they're getting them up and running into this space to feel a little bit more comfortable using the tools that exist. So I do think some of the thinking about how we develop individuals and encourage them. The other piece, which for me goes back to some of the behavioral element where we started, is I think it's important for us to set some expectations in organizations. And one of you said, look, this is perhaps more of a human problem than a technology problem. We are organizations that are still driven by people, and that's what's producing a lot of the content that goes out of the door. So really thinking about how we support individuals and be clear about what we expect you to be doing. I think is a big part of this as well.
Yeah,
Jay, do you just just a quick question. Within Bakers, do you have? I mean, we're obviously a much smaller organisation, so we've kind of got an AI team leading this. Do you have that within Bakers? I'd be interested in how this works with other firms as well, sort of helping everybody get up to the level that you want them to, gently, without fear.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's really a collaboration across a couple of groups. A lot led by our Chief Innovation Officer, supported by our CIO and the technology team, but also then bringing in our leadership and development, leadership and learning team from support on some of that training. We've run a couple of things now firm-wide that go into this space of some programming, and they've been really successful, in part because it's given people the space for a conversation and to get deeper into some of what's possible. But it's also provided the space for some of the conversation. Where do we see this going as a firm? What's it going to look like? And that's given license then for them to be talking more with their colleagues. So that's really helped. But in terms of who's really at the center of this, for us, it's our Chief Innovation Officer, technology, and then in particular that kind of learning and development team supporting on it. Kelly, were you going to jump in?
I was, but that's a great question. I'm sure everyone on the call will want to hear it from your perspective. I think just a couple of points I had on what it was that you were saying. I think you were talking about it from the firm level and then at an individual level. I think at the firm level, lawyers and partners are highly driven, competitive individuals. Most of them want to be working for the best firm. And so I think there's a narrative that can be created and shared, which is, if we as a firm want to win more clients and specialize and grow, we need to be embracing technology as much as we possibly can, particularly on the client side, but end to end, through and through. And then my thought on the individual level is, I think what I've seen work really well with some customers is where there are career pathways clearly mapped out, sort of junior associate through to lawyer, through to partner. And actually, as part of those pathways, AI courses have now been included as part of that. I think it's interesting because I think the development of a lawyer previously wouldn't really have had a lot of technology within it, and now it has to. So it's a new skill for them to learn. And I think when we build it into, in completing this course or expanding into this area of expertise, one, it helps you specifically on this career pathway, but two, it future-proofs you because there are some areas of law where we will likely see the population of lawyers, decrease in. You become an AI lawyer, it's very unlikely that you'd ever be out of a job.
I think what you're hitting on and resonates for me is the model's changed, or certainly changing, and what's the promise now that any organization, but going in-house or law firms now providing to talent and encouraging them to join their firm or an organization. What is it that you're going to get here? Why come here? Why stay? And what organizations or firms may have promised 5 years ago, 10 years ago, today needs to look different. And I think the expectations of individuals, may well be that, yes, I'm not going to stay for 15 years, become partner, hopefully, and that's the career path. We've moved beyond that, we know. But how do we attract and retain strong talent if it's for 3, 4, 5 years? What is it that they're going to get? And I think I agree with what you've hit on in terms of we need to be demonstrating that we're very much engaged in these conversations, and that in terms of building the skill set, so the type of work and opportunities that you're going to get will support the capabilities that you need to be building for today and tomorrow. And that needs some thought, and that's a different psychological contract. That's a different talent promise. And I do think certainly reflecting on our firm, and I suspect similar in other places, there are certain pockets of work or certain clients or in certain jurisdictions where the leveraging and the need to be using some of these tools that we're talking about isn't the same as if I was doing a different type of work in a different practice in a different jurisdiction. So we've got to navigate that within organizations as well. But I very much agree with you in terms of essentially saying the model's changed, and that promise and how we're developing talent moving forward.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stick in this area for a moment, but also just remind people that we've got a couple of questions that have come through, and if there are others, please do put those in the Q&A box, and we'll try and cover those and weave them into the discussion here. So thank you for those. But sticking in this area for a moment as we think about the human element of this, and we're thinking about kind of that pace of change. But how do we make sure that we're bringing people with us on the journey? And it's linked to some of the things that we have been saying. But part of it's about navigating change. Part of it's ensuring that the talent and individuals that we have in organizations today are stretching themselves, are positive about some of the opportunity that exists. But Helen, I don't know what you see from thinking about kind of in-house and individuals that you're working with. How do we make sure that we bring people on the journey?
Well, I've stolen this from somewhere, but somebody said a while ago, and I think this has to be the case, is leadership comes from the top. So I think there always has to be that movement to set out expectations, whatever your business is, whether it's legal or whether you're within a business that as in-house counsel. I mean, we have what I think is really great is seeing that leadership and saying, this is how we want you to work. One of the questions that has come up is in relation to working faster. But actually, really, I think leadership has to explain what you're expecting of your staff in relation to working better and smarter in order to help the business do what it should be doing and growing and surviving with the right people in place. So I think that's probably an important point. Kelly, you will probably have some more useful thoughts on that.
No, I think that's a great point. I think, again, it kind of touched on the point before, which is it depends where the individual is, and it's going to be different. And whilst a firm will want to, cascade down best practice, and this is what we're striving for, this is what we're aiming for, this is what good looks like, you will always be met with some resistance from some individuals. And that'll be for a multitude of reasons. It may be that they're not quite as tech literate as the others in the organization. It could be generational. It could be because they serve a group of clients that are very anti-AI, and therefore they have to succumb to that. But I think in terms of getting the buy-in from as many people as possible to move in the direction that the firm wants to, I think it's about having really clear, honest communication with the firm about what the strategy is. And that's quite challenging. I think most firms that I work with will have a people or a talent strategy. And it surprises me how often when I then go into those firms, at the lawyer level, that isn't as prevalent in their day-to-day as HR would like it to be. And I think when it comes to this, where AI is broadening out to be not just within the tech remit, but within the people and HR remit, actually it should be top of everybody's radar. So I think what that looks like practically is things like town halls, like team meetings, at shareholder meetings. Those are the things where that communication needs to be clear in terms of this is where we've started, this is where we want to go, this is where we are and what we need to do to get there. And I think as long as that communication is clear, the training and enablement is in place, then you've set yourself up as well as you can.
Yeah, thank you. And I was also reflecting on what you said, Helen, the question around, does this mean that we just need to be faster in many places? And I think for me, I reflect on that and say, look, that's an element of it. And I think where you went, it's also this opportunity to streamline, to be more efficient, be more effective in some places, and also thinking where we started the call, but how we're deploying resources differently, because I think there are things that we know we're not getting to today. How do we leverage the technology and the tools to be able to have that resource focus on things that really are that further value add, that we need a human in the mix to be able to drive forward. Another question that's come up just in terms of how do we know what good AI is as we look ahead? And at least I'll say from my perspective, there are many requests that we get kind of firm wide for using a different AI tool externally or a bolt-on. Certainly what the approach we've taken as a firm is to be clear about these are the products, or this is where we're investing, and trying to avoid as much as possible this temptation to add on kind of the latest thing. So just to some degree, that may mean that there are some things we're not at the leading edge on. There are some things that we might miss out on for sure. But in terms of determining what's good AI, I think being able to take this and keep conducting the kind of those reviews instead of kind of jumping into whatever the new thing is tomorrow, because there are plenty of new things that keep coming up. And Kelly, I don't know from your perspective and in the space, I'm thinking about kind of the Workday experience. I assume there are plenty of things out there that maybe even within Workday, but clients, customers could be thinking about. But I don't know whether you had another perspective on how we kind of audit some of that AI going forward.
Yeah, it's a great point, and I think you're spot on in terms of there is so much out there, and I think we're having to shift from a technology procurement perspective, particularly within law firms. We're used to seeing, cycles that are several months long. And if we allow that in the world of AI, by the time or rather the time that's passed between you being interested through to you actually buying, the product's going to be completely different, and there's probably something else out there that now does it better. So I think it's around one, yes, as you say, balancing what is your strategy. So lean on your technology vendors and partners. A good technology partner will help you map out what that strategy is, and point you to the vendors that work well with the solutions you already have. I think technology vendors that are embracing this new world of AI, and I think that we are one of them, is that we are admitting we can't do everything perfectly. We can't be everything to everyone, but here is a technology partner that you should investigate into because we feel they could fit that requirement for you. So I think really lean heavily into your main technology vendors, help them build a strategy with you, which will help ring fence. These are the clear guidelines. This is what good looks like to prevent everyone going off and buying their own separate things. And then I think second to that, it's at the same time, be very open and learn as much as you can, because the products are changing so quickly. The offerings on the market are expanding vastly. It's incredibly difficult to remain up to date with what is available to you out there. But the more that you can be, the better informed your decisions are going to be. And I think ultimately, where I've seen with my clients and the firms that I work with, where their technology decisions, be that AI or something else, have really paid off, is when that decision has impacted or led to achieving a wider strategy that actually isn't related to tech at all. So you will have within HR, and I'm sure that you have this, Jay, your people strategy. What are the key pillars of that? And as long as the technology enables something within those key pillars, it's going to be a good investment for you.
Yeah. I agree. And I was going to say, I love what you say in terms of this piece I was picking up on was keep learning. And I was just reflecting on that learning, that curiosity, and keep playing. I mean, I do have a personal frustration. I think we've spent a lot of time playing and testing, and how do we get to that next level, I think. But I think it's important to keep that play and testing, because I think, one, that helps to bring people with us on the journey, helps people to learn, and I think we've got to foster that curiosity of these kind of tools and what's out there. And you both can disagree with me. Do I need to know every tool that's on the market and how it's developing? No, I don't think so. I hope not. Or if I do, I'm in trouble. But I do need to have, I think, that curiosity and be trying to understand how things keep developing and what's possible, and not only for me as an individual, but kind of setting that tone. And I think, Helen, you talked about, a lot of this needs to come from the top as well, setting the tone. But as you think about some of that learning and curiosity, does that resonate, Helen, as you think about some of the discussions that you're having, or from an in-house perspective as well?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I think it's really interesting. You've kind of got on the one side the real excitement of, oh my God, we've got to get on top of all of these tools. And, you'll hear all about the big, Claude is going to eat this one or that one. And also just trying to stay calm and saying, yep, let's test, let's be excited, let's make sure we've got the right guardrails in place to test these things. So what you've said, obviously on a much bigger scale at Baker's, really resonates with me, is we really want you to be using these tools. We want you to be using the right tools, and they won't necessarily be the best. But I don't think it really matters at the moment, because it's just really interesting. The other thing that actually I think I'm finding interesting seeing people say, well, I've tried that, it didn't work, so I'm not going to use it. But actually things have moved so quickly with a lot of these tools. I'm like, right, you have to test it again. So, for example, we're testing a tool at the moment that I know last year couldn't draft a decent agreement when I asked it, with some decent prompting. The same prompting this year did actually a really, really good job. So these things are moving really quickly. And I just think it's really, I'm loving the excitement and enthusiasm, but at the same time, you sort of just need to stay calm and also do your vendor due diligence. What tools should we be buying, and just making sure that they have some of the right security things in place.
Yeah, your comment about things are moving quick in terms of what worked 6 months ago, or what didn't work 6 months ago or a year ago, with that decent prompting does look different today. It reminds me, I was at a session earlier in the year, and I think one of the things that AI had been struggling with in terms of pictures was drawing human hands. And anyway,
Yes.
they did this kind of progression, and how that, what it looks like today compared to what it looks like 12 months ago. So I think a reminder for us all that curiosity, it's not that I've read a book and now that's done. It's I need to keep going back to that book, because things are changing within there and on the pages, and am I keeping that level of curiosity? So thank you. I guess, Helen, sticking with you, an easy question. So what does the future of legal talent look like tomorrow? And I say an easy question flippantly, but we've talked about a whole number of things here in terms of that importance of agility, the kind of some practical changes and tools, how we're seeing that impact productivity in firms and in organizations. We've talked about change, we've talked about how we bring people with us. And as we touched on some of that, we got into a little bit about roles. But I'm curious, your reflection, and maybe starting in-house, what do you think that looks like tomorrow in terms of kind of legal talent? Those roles, what does exist, what doesn't exist, what's particularly important or more important? Maybe some of the things that we've touched on that you wanted to amplify. But what are your thoughts on looking ahead in terms of legal talent?
Well, I'm at the age now where everybody is saying, can you talk to a kid who wants to do law? And quite frankly, I'm not sure what to say. Although at the last conference that I went to, one of the partners from DLA stood up and said, look, my daughter's now doing law at university, and one of their topics is AI, which I think is brilliant from all sorts of points of view. But I think we now, we all have to raise our game a bit. And Kelly, what you said about generational issues, I think is really interesting, because one of my team said to me last year, quite rudely, I thought, "It's all right for you, Helen, but I've got 20 or 30 years left of my career." So it's kind of like, well, you're old, you don't matter anymore. So I think there is this nervousness for that sort of younger generation of, am I going to have a job still? But I think from a learning point of view, we have to all be, and I think we are, and we're encouraging it to everyone to embrace all of the tools that they've got, and just making the right risk assessment as to what they use for what. Then that includes AI, but all sorts of other things as well. But I think I'm hoping that the training is getting better, and particularly for in-house counsel, it's such a different job from being a private practice lawyer. We really have to learn and teach ourselves and make sure that we're upskilling ourselves on all of the tools that are available to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kelly, from a maybe from a business of law perspective, but any reflections that you have as you think about roles and talent and how this is going to play out as we look forward?
Massively. It's probably one of the most exciting bits, or the bits that make me the most passionate about what I do. I think in the legal context, I think traditionally when we've looked at talent and what it is that we need when it comes to either progressing existing talent or finding new talent, we've based that a lot around sort of tenure or PQE, for example. And instead, I think we'll be shifting and evolving to a view that is more around the skills and the expertise that we need and where we can find that. And that will look very different. And AI can help us as a law firm do that, provided that it's mapped out properly. And lo and behold, AI will probably become one of those skills or areas of expertise that we're looking for. So it kind of comes full circle and closed loop. So I think, firms will move more towards, strategic talent deployment instead of, just kind of filling the clientele requirements that we have. And instead of sourcing or moving or assigning work based purely on who's available and who sits down the hall or who's potentially worked with that client before. Instead, it's around matching skill sets dynamically to what the firm needs at that time. And once that's been able to be achieved, you're then able to look at, well, where do we as a firm want to go? Do we want to broaden into a new market? Do we want to service a new group of clientele that we haven't before? And in doing that, you can then map out your workforce in terms of what we have already and the progression paths that they're going into. Or do we need to start, attaining new talent and expanding that way? So I think it will change massively. And I think it will result in, I think the HR and people strategies will just be more prominent than they ever have been. I think that, the reason I love sitting in the sector that I sit within at Workday is that, I always say this to my clients, your products are your people. There are other industries don't have that. Your people are what you base your clientele and your revenue on. And I think from that perspective, it means that we need to be able to adjust to that wherever we can. And AI can help us do that, particularly within the legal sector.
Jake, just a quick question for you. Does that mean that firms are hiring? I mean, as you said, Kelly, it's a people business. So typically you're, old school, you're hiring just lots of lawyers. And tech didn't used to be the most exciting place for law firms, but now it really is. And so presumably we're hiring legal engineers to help alongside the legal team to do the client delivery work.
I think we're seeing new roles that firms are bringing on board, and exactly what you've just described. We're seeing where I started with that headline from the FT yesterday, but within firms, bringing on different roles to support what this is going to look like moving forward. A little bit like a few years ago, we might have been talking about legal project managers and how we're going to manage transactions and cases differently, and really project manage those and bringing that skill set. I think it's now where we are is looking at some of the skill set that's going to support this next wave and this next evolution. And I was reflecting on the comments, where someone had rudely said to you, maybe it's okay for us because we've got less time left. I think one, I listened to Linda Grattan and 100-Year Life. I think there's much more in the tank for all of us, and as we kind of reinvent that third or fourth phase of our careers, this is going to be preeminent through all of that. But also that I think it's incumbent back to this continuing to be curious and learn. We're seeing that actually many of our partners very much are doing that. In some cases where we're having to have a little bit more focus is with some of our senior associates. So those more junior associates coming in, absolutely, have been using this perhaps through university, college, and already using it in their personal lives. Partners are recognizing their kind of leadership role in this. It's interesting that if anything, some of that push that we've needed to focus on a little bit has been with senior associates. I do want to pick up on another question that's come through, but really just thinking about and Kelly, maybe turning to you, some of the potential risks associated with the kind of AI offerings that exist. Now that could be tools and product within Workday, but even broader than that. But your reflections on some of the potential risks there.
Yeah, I think with any AI offering, there is risk because of how quickly it's evolving, how new it is. I think the answer is partnering with a vendor that puts risk and trust at the center of their product development, and Workday is one of those things. We as an organization, being the organization that we are, working with our customers where we're providing platforms for either their financial side, their HR side, or in some cases even both, we wouldn't be able to keep coming back to work if we were to be developing AI features or agentic use cases, whatever it may be, that held too much of a risk for our customers, because our reputation is at stake. Very much like with a law firm, when they're thinking about new AI technology, what do they think about? Their reputation at stake if something goes wrong. So from our side, and obviously that's all I can speak to, but there is a very robust risk framework that is gone through when it comes to decision making around every new AI feature that becomes available. And also one of the benefits of, leaning into and utilizing AI that is offered by the same provider of your system of record, so to speak, is that it's governed by the same roles and permissions, the same security framework that you as an organization have already set up. So that risk is hugely minimized there. With other vendors, as I say, I think the answer is spend as much time as you need to with them to wrap your head around what the risk is and how you mitigate it. And as long as you get the assurance from the vendor that they do mitigate risk in every way that they can, then it's for you to internally review, is this risk worth taking for us as a firm?
Fantastic. Thank you. Helen, anything you wanted to add on the risk piece at all before we close?
No, I think that's really right. I think it's about choosing the right tools. I mean, look, we're doing this, and obviously we're probably super careful because we're a bunch of lawyers, but it's not just taking it at face value either, because we work for lots of AI companies as well, and what they say and what they do sometimes are two different things. So it's just about checking really what that they are very trustworthy. And also I think talking internally to the team about what to use for what, use AI for that, what I call green zone, low risk stuff. But there's an interesting discussion I think going on at the moment about using AI note takers for and whether you lose legal privilege if you're having discussions using these AI note takers. So it's about having the guardrails as well as doing that diligence.
Fantastic. Well, Helen, Kelly, thank you both for all that you've shared in this conversation. We've covered a lot of ground. I know there's a lot more that we could cover. There were some questions that we didn't get to. If there are other questions that people had, please don't hesitate to reach out to NetLaw Media and we can follow up through that route. But Helen, again, thank you for all of the comments and insights, and Kelly as well. Thank you very much. I hope through this session you've got a sense of the importance of taking that kind of thoughtful, structured approach. Thinking about where we started in terms of some of those reflecting on processes, some of the practical thoughts in terms of where we're seeing some of those productivity gains, but also then how we think about that shift in mindset, some of the behavioral changes, position the change and bring people with us, as well as looking forward and what might be around the corner that we all need to lead on. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for joining the session today. Very much enjoyed the conversation, and no doubt we'll all be talking about this very soon.